Welcome to the Alcohol Free Life podcast, brought to you by thesoberclub.com. I'm Janie Lee Grace. This is for you if you've quit the booze or you'd like to, or maybe you're just sober curious. I'll bring you tips and motivation without any judgment, and there'll be inspiration from experts, quit-lit authors, and sober heroes. Hi, and welcome to the podcast. And what a week it's been. I'm absolutely exhausted. It's been amazing to get out and meet some Sober Club members, some podcast listeners. I've done a couple of events this week. Well, 3, in fact. Probably about 5 since I last did a podcast. So it really has been fun. Most of my dates are now finished, apart from my event at Club Soda on Monday, the 2nd of December. I think there might be a couple of tickets left, but it's pretty much sold out. But really looking forward to that. And then now we're kind of looking to next year. So there's an event in Andover on January the 10th. At the Lights. That's going to be great. Really hope you can come to that. See if you can prep ahead, make a weekend of it. And then also Blackwell's in Edinburgh on January the 29th. So that's the dates out the way. Let's get them out the way quickly. But it has been a fascinating week, because while I've been traveling around and doing all my bits and pieces, obviously I've been trying to keep up with some of the news around alcohol. And there's often quite a lot, particularly at this time of year. And I'm guessing some of you saw the Panorama program at the beginning of this week, and I thought it was really well done. It was very hard hitting. The young woman, the reporter, had found that she had liver disease. It was a huge shock to her to see just how advanced it was, although obviously manageable and come back fromable, if that's a word. So the program showed her discussing the fact that she'd been a binge drinker and really had no idea how quickly that could escalate to the liver, being compromised. The program also showed a woman who had very advanced liver disease and was apparently about an hour away from death, they reckoned. So it was quite hard hitting. One of the interesting pieces, I thought, was they interviewed some consultants, some various doctors, and what they basically said was that a binge, the definition of a binge in clinical terms, is when someone has 6 units in one sitting. So not 6 units across a week, but 6 units in one go. Think about it. The kind of glasses of wine that are often served in pubs and wine bars. I mean, you could have 6 units with 2 large glasses of wine. I mean, literally. There are many of us who would have been downing 6 units pretty much every day, and that is technically a binge. And this program revealed that, in medical terms, they consider that if you have this binge twice, if you like, twice in any week, your chances of getting liver disease are doubled. If that goes to 3 times, 3 binges in a week, then it's 3 to 4 times as likely to have liver disease. I mean, this is really scary stuff when you think about the fact that if someone was walking around saying, I drink responsibly, as the government would say, I only have 14 units a week, I drink responsibly. Yeah, but when do you have your 14 units? Oh, well, 6 on a Saturday and 7 on a Sunday. Oh, sorry, sweetie, you're at a, greatly higher risk of liver disease. So it was quite hard hitting. And I thought it was great that they explained that in no uncertain terms. But, and there's going to be a big but, right? I was absolutely incensed that they went to all this trouble. The reporter was great. She quit alcohol. She did this research. She really explained just what a shock it was to finally see the truth around alcohol and how unbelievably harmful it is for you. The program showed that the way the industry had marketed alcohol to women, especially when it used to be very much a guy's domain, they literally brought out alcopops to get younger people and fancy drinks that would appeal to women. So that, students and young people and women think that drinking is glamorous. So she went through all of this, and we got to see all of this on the documentary. And then we saw her take some time out, and I think she cleaned up her diet. She stopped drinking, and after a period of time, she went back, and we saw her having another test. And lo and behold, everything had improved, and there was this sort of joyous moment where the consultant says to her, "This is a great result, a really amazing result. Look at the difference from what it was before." So in other words, it was not too late for her. She had repaired her liver. How fantastic is that? And then, wait for it, the consultant says, "You can drink again, but just be careful of not going into binge levels." I mean, seriously? I I wish I'd recorded it so I could play it back to make sure I got that right. They actually said, you can drink again. Be cautious. Have an alcohol-free day. Yeah, they didn't say that, but you know what I mean. I mean, come on, seriously. What does it take for people to kind of recognize, oh, wow, hold on a minute. No one needs to drink. No one. If you've had a wake-up call like that, why would you even be considering ever going back to the poison? Incredible. I was amazed. This is what keeps us stuck, because there will have been people watching that program who will now think to themselves, oh, thank goodness for that. So, I'm only on 4 a night, so I'm good to go. I mean, seriously, quit altogether. Life is so much better without. I wish they'd have just titled it that, my title of my TED Talk, Sobriety Rocks. Who knew? Who knew? Who knew that life is so much better without any? Right, there's my little news of the week rant for this week. We are, of course, getting closer to the festive season. We've had Thanksgiving this week. I did a social media post just reminding our US friends, just take it easy, just do all the pieces, do your prep. That lovely saying, no is a complete sentence. If you don't want to go to a social occasion, it's okay just to say no. Protect your own boundaries. That really is all that matters, and do what feels good for you. And in any case, why does the holiday period have to mean copious amounts of alcohol? It's crazy. Of course you can go to a coffee shop, or I don't know, go bowling or ice skating or something, or make sure that where you're going has got great alcohol-free drinks. There's always a way, but you do need to prep in advance. And I have had people in the sober club say they're already starting to feel a bit stressed that the relatives are getting in touch, and a few people have had friends or family members say to them, "Oh, you're not going to carry on with this sober lark over Christmas, are you?" Meaning, "Oh, you won't spoil it for me," meaning you won't be shining a light on my drinking, will you? Well, yeah, maybe I will. Everyone has to do what's good for them, right? Don't enter into discussion, honestly. Just do your prep ahead, make sure you know what you're drinking, give the venue a call or take your own if that's appropriate. And above all, get connected. Having that connection is really key. And, I'm going to say it, of course, join us in the sober club, because that way you've got cheerleaders, you've got built-in cheerleaders who you really, really have. So please think about joining us in the sober club, because the connection there is absolutely amazing, and there's absolutely no judgment. And there's a huge, huge member portal full of wellbeing content. So you really feel like your life is changing, and you're going to get that second chance at life rather than just panicking about feeling deprived. I haven't told you about my guest this week yet. Really thrilled to be able to get to chat to James Gwinnett, who has done all kinds of fascinating things and had quite a journey. But I love the way James talks about mental fitness. It's a different kind of spin on it all, isn't it? We think about physical fitness, of course we do, and we think about our emotional well-being, but this is just a slightly different take on it. Mental fitness. I think you're going to find it really interesting. Feeling like your sobriety journey has given you a whole new lease of life? Are you feeling super enthusiastic about sobriety? Ever thought about turning that experience into something bigger, something that could inspire and help others while also building a career that feels truly magical? Why not explore a career that aligns with your values? Think about being a sober coach. You'll play a key role in the growing sober curious movement, guiding people towards living their best life without the booze. And of course, you'll lay the foundations for your own journey to well-being. Here's why this work is really special. You get to make a real impact. You can help others navigate the same path that you've walked. There's personal transformation there, laying the foundations for your own growth and developing your knowledge of holistic health and well-being. Flexibility, build a career and a heart-centered brand on your own terms. Use your story. It's your greatest asset. Grow personally and professionally. Coaching is all about the connection, the continuous learning, and the collaboration. You would become part of our family. We have a training that is so comprehensive, from the core modules right through to all the supporting materials and the business sessions. We've got you covered, and you don't need prior experience as a coach. You do, however, need to have had the experience of choosing sobriety and feeling absolutely passionate about inspiring others. So if you're interested, go to thesoberclub.com, click on the main menu, become a sober coach, and then we can arrange to have a chat. They're tiny groups, lots of one-to-one involvement. Get in touch. And if that is something that interests you, by the way, I have a webinar on Tuesday 3rd of December at 7:45 p.m. UK time. It's free to attend. It's called From Sobriety to Purpose. And we'll just have a chat about some of the incredible ways you might want to support other people. So just go to thesoberclub.com, click on events for that one, thesoberclub.com, click on events, and check out the free webinar on Tuesday night, From Sobriety to Purpose. My guest is James Gwinnett, who has a really interesting story to tell us, and a new book released, Ready, Set, Life. James, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you reaching out to me and telling me a little bit about your story. It sounds really fascinating. Let's take you right back before we get into the book. Take you right back to what was going on in the addiction years. I think you're 8 years sober. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. Amazing. Congratulations. That's wonderful.
You've set the scene and said,
yeah, exactly. So just take me back to, what was like before, what life was like before all of that.
Yeah. So the long story cut reasonably short for time purposes, is that just over 10 years ago now, I was playing a fairly decent level of rugby semi-professionally, not full professional, but I was getting paid a bit of pocket money for it alongside another job, and it was a high enough level National League type stuff to take it seriously. I was disciplined. I was eating all the right things. I was doing my weights training. I was doing my fitness training, and with all of that came a certain discipline, a certain routine, a certain structure in my life. And it was all geared up towards being a best rugby player that I could be at 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon when the whistle went and I ran around a rugby field for 80 minutes with 14 mates. And it gave me a sense of purpose, it gave me a sense of identity. Long story short, as I say, that all came crashing to an end. Vividly remember the date of 9th of February 2013, when in what can only be described as a freak accident, I flew into an opponent member of the opposition team with such force that I compacted my neck and cracked a vertebra in the base of my neck.
Wow.
And I went off to hospital and had various X-rays and CT scans and was sellotaped to a hospital bed for 5 days while they worked out whether or not they needed to operate. Fortunately, they didn't. They didn't have to slice my throat open and put a titanium cage in there or anything quite that grim. But they did say, "I'm afraid your rugby days are over." And it was a very, very sudden, black and white. I had no choice in the matter. I would have wanted to have ended my career, if you could call it a career, on my own terms. But I very quickly had to adjust to a new identity and adjust to a new identity. I didn't have one. I had for 20 years. I'm 6'5". I weighed 17 stone, over 100 kilos at the time. Saw myself as the sort of the macho alpha male, fairly invincible, perhaps not a terribly healthy identity, but nevertheless an identity. Saw myself as invincible for that time. One of the lads, part of the team.
Yeah.
I went from that persona to not wanting to socialize, feeling like I didn't fit in anymore, wanting to shut myself away, and seeing myself for the first time as frail, weak, vulnerable. And 10 years ago, and still to an extent, the moment when men don't talk about their mental health issues, it wasn't something that I particularly wanted to address.
Yeah.
So I sought self-medication in the form of alcohol.
Had you already been drinking, or was that not on the cards when you were playing rugby?
I'd always signed up to the few beers after matches. Absolutely.
Right.
Was,
But then it ramped up massively, did it?
exactly.
Yeah.
It went from being, I was always a big drinker. It was part of the identity.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a sort of competitive, well, I can drink more pints than you can. And when you're young and perhaps playing rugby or something similar, you can sort of get away with it as banter.
Yeah.
But once you're doing it on your own in secret and hiding it from loved ones, family, friends, and hiding bottles of gin in your rugby bag because you're no longer playing rugby and your partner is not going to think about looking in your rugby bag, and you justify that as a perfectly reasonable thing to do, it then starts becoming a problem. And of course, when it starts becoming a problem for other people, that's when the ramifications really hit home. So over a 3-year period, it's all started. I use the word innocently. It started perfectly innocently. I was at home with this rigid neck brace on after being told that I could no longer play rugby, for home alone for 3 months, signed off work. And one day, after watching my eighth episode of Friends on repeat on daytime television or Bargain Hunt or whatever it was, I found myself wandering to the fridge for answers, even though I didn't know what the question was. And there was a nice cold can of beer just sat there in the door, and I thought, oh, that would be a nice treat. And it spiraled, and I found myself a few days later drinking 4 beers, and a couple of weeks later I was wandering to the local co-op to buy a little bottle of spirits, and it just went downhill from there, as I'm sure many people will be aware of the sort of the vicious circle, the spiral.
Yeah. What was there anyone sort of looking out for you at this point? Did anyone sort of call you out on it, or were you just kind of doing it in secret pretty much?
I think my ability to hide it certainly masked it from loved ones.
Yeah.
I sense that, and my parents and friends have said to me since, that they knew something was going on, but my reticence to be socialize and sort of put myself out there and wanting to sort of shut myself away and not talk to anyone compounded the issue. And I was with a girlfriend, fiance actually at the time, a very serious relationship, but that ended when she found out the extent of it. And it, for me, the rock bottom is the phrase, isn't it? Was when I wound up alone in a dingy hotel room with an empty bottle of Jack Daniels next to me. And the next morning, it was the light bulb moment, the pick up the backside, the epiphany, whatever you want to call it, that I needed, that this had to stop.
Yeah. It's really interesting, isn't it? You know, just a few things you said there. I mean, you know that this kind of loss of identity thing, it's huge, isn't it, for people, you know, when something happens in their life. But the interesting thing is that we have this sort of inbuilt, belief, a sort of deep rooted inner belief that alcohol will be the answer, you know, sort of when you feel crap about everything, alcohol will be the solace, will give you the solace. And that is sort of perpetuated throughout society all the time, isn't it? You know, yes. No one ever says no. You know, I won't find the answer there.
It's that age-old phrase that alcohol is the problem and the solution. Isn't it?
Yeah. It's an interesting one that that however bright we are, we can't seem to grasp, at least it takes many of us a long time to grasp that alcohol has zero benefits and doesn't do any of the things it says it's going to, on the tin, as it
The
were.
whole concept of addiction is based around addiction is a strong word. Some people watching this will enjoy a glass of wine. My wife enjoys a glass of wine, every now and again. And my friends, still go to watch rugby matches with my friends, and they will happily enjoy a few pints. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't object to being around alcohol, and it's not for me to tell others that they have a drinking problem. This is all personal experience. But as I say, the word addiction does have these certainly negative connotations, but also the ability for the brain to somehow override itself and convince you that what you're doing is perfectly normal when it's absolutely not. Like I say, hiding bottles of spirits in a rugby bag because I knew that my fiance at the time was not going to look in it because I was no longer using it. It was stashed away on the top of a wardrobe.
Yeah,
And
that's
taking
not good,
it
is it?
off the local Weatherspoons and sitting next to a guy who's the stereotypical alcoholic, who's perhaps, I don't know, talking to his pint, or this spectrum of from the sort of the functioning alcoholic all the way through to the stereotype, that makes it very, very grey. There's a lot of grey. There's no black and white in terms of
No,
should I stop
absolutely.
drinking or shouldn't I? Where do I stand on that scale?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, you've probably seen a lot of the work that I do. I'm a coach and I work with people who, that is the expression grey area drinkers is somewhere on that spectrum. But my belief is that, none of us should wait to the bottom, till we get to the bottom before we step off the booze elevator. If you have even the slightest inkling that this is not serving you, then how fantastic to recognise that and actually get off, before it takes you further down. That's what I wish.
If you switched on to recognise that, you've done incredibly well.
Exactly.
And
as long as you can get some support,
Yeah,
and somebody
absolutely.
else might say to you, yeah, amazing, rather than, what happened to me for years, which is that I recognised that something had to change, but everyone around me would just say, well, no, you're fine, just have an alcohol-free day,
It's something that's very interesting because it's something I learned 8 years ago. The people that I called and still call friends were the ones that said, yeah, no, well done, James, you've done the right thing. The ones that I have distanced myself from are the ones that said, oh, don't worry about it, just have one for the road, or oh no, you're okay, you don't have a problem, it's fine, just look, come on, mate, here, have a pint. So there's a very dividing line, I think, in terms of the responses that you get from people on reaction. If you tell someone you're giving up, or you've given up, or you're sober, or whatever phrase you might use, and I do think that response is an indication of
what's going on with them. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you definitely shine a light on other people for sure. So you hit, your rock bottom. You had your light bulb moment, as it were. What then? How did you kind of get free?
So then it was funny how the addictive personality again kicked in. It was as if I became addicted to being sober. Because I immersed myself in the AA program, in seminars, webinars, the Alan Carr, I can't remember what it's called, Easy Way, hypnotherapy, counselling, reading of the subject, just as much as I could get my hands on. And actually the AA program was very powerful for me. It was it was the STEP program, and the concept of finding what is called your higher power, in terms of something that is bigger than yourself, that you can devote yourself to, that can give you back in your life whatever it is that you need, be it routine, discipline, structure, identity, something to devote yourself to. And some people, if you're going through this journey and you read through the steps, there's quite a religious undertone to it. I'm as religious as a block of cheese. I like the phrase God as you understand him, and whatever that entails. So it could be an elephant with four legs, it could be Yoda, it could be, it doesn't matter what it is. For me, it was the desire to rediscover my health and my fitness, and call it fate. I'm not sure if I believe in these things or not, but a couple of weeks after deciding, after this rock bottom moment, after deciding enough was enough, I found myself watching the London Marathon on TV, and it hit me. I need this. I need this. And it wasn't a case of I should do this, which is the sort of the wishy-washy, oh, I'd like to make a change, but I don't know how. It was the very much the impactful, right, this is the defining moment in my change. Because in order to make change, you need the driver away, for the push away from what you want to change from, but you also need the pull towards what you want to change to. So that moment of knowing where I was coming from and where I wanted to go to, in terms of setting myself a definitive challenge that would give me structure, was another light bulb moment. And I the very next day signed up to run the London Marathon the following year.
Amazing.
And that facilitated a year-long program of rediscovery and redemption and rehabilitation and all the words.
Had you been obviously you were very fit as a rugby player, but had you been a runner before?
So no,
Right.
I had done, say, through this spiral spiral of drinking had gone on for 3 years or so. I had some vague level of residual fitness from my rugby days, but it was very much strength, power based. I'd never run anything more than about 10 kilometers. So it was certainly a transition. But as I say, it was the structure of that, and setting myself a goal that I was able to stick to over a period of longevity that became my higher power. And funnily enough, I was sat in an AA meeting couple of months later. I can't remember the time frame, but after making the decision that this was me, I found myself sat in an AA meeting which lasts an hour, and I thought to myself, I could be spending this time running. And the AA is a phenomenal program. It's helped millions of people, myself included. But I've not been back to the AA. I've channeled my mindfulness, my meditation, my well-being. These are all very namby-pamby, wishy-washy, fluffy words in today modern society.
Not for us.
Good, exactly.
Not for what I do.
This idea of being aware of your emotions and conscious of the challenges that we face and how we react to them, as a definition of mindfulness and self-awareness, that became running for me. And I don't run for my physical fitness. I run for my mental fitness.
But you certainly weren't going to do anything by halves, and
No.
so you went for it in a big way, and you were the first person to run. Tell me about this: 102 miles of the Cotswold Way. Wow, that is a lot of miles.
A year later, I crossed the London Marathon finish line in just under 4 hours. I set myself the challenge of 4 hours, and I mean, the emotions on that at that moment were like nothing else I've ever experienced.
I cry watching the London Marathon. I can't imagine what it's like to be in it.
I did a year before. I was sobbing a year before, and then I was sobbing a year later at the finish line. I can remember nailing down on the mall, kissing the concrete, and then standing up and just grabbing the person next to me, total stranger, and just sort of bear hug of this poor sweaty person next to me. And after spending a couple of days feeling a bit sorry for myself because my legs were aching, I started looking into other challenges, and there's something called type 2 fun, where you don't particularly, it feels a bit tough and you don't particularly enjoy it at the time, but on reflection you look back and you think, oh, that wasn't quite bad, I'd like to do that again. And the concept of wanting to push myself further and sort of discover what, having put my body through the mess and damage that I'd done to it over a 3-year period, wanting to sort of prove to myself that there was still more that I could achieve, and to continue that journey of sobriety, mindfulness, self-awareness, everything that we've talked about, already talked about. I started looking at longer distances. I thought to myself, well, if I can run 26.2 miles, I can run 30, I can run 50, I can run 70. And I ran a couple of years later, I ran no, sorry, a year later, about 18 months later, I ran from Carlisle to Newcastle across the width of the country. That was 70 miles. I then signed up to a run along the Thames called the Thames Path 100, which unsurprisingly is 100 miles along the Thames Path
Wow.
into Oxford. I then moved to Bath with my now girlfriend at the time, now wife, and we found ourselves living on the back of our flat looks out over the end of the Cotswold Way. And I did a bit of research and I thought that's a good one. So Cotswold's Way is 102 miles from
My goodness.
Hampden to Bath, and it does this all the way through the Cotswolds. The elevation is half the height of Everest. And then the final one, I have sort of semi-retired because my wife has basically told me that I should. 6 days after we got married, because she's incredibly accommodating, I ran from London to Bristol in one go, which was 145 miles.
My goodness.
It took me just over 30 hours. So the point of all this, I could sort of sit here and say, look, I've done all this like in interesting stuff, and aren't I brilliant? It's not about that. It's the point of it is that I use the metaphor of ultra distance running as a metaphor for life, in that you on these challenges you put yourself through and you experience terrible lows, but also incredible highs. And if you're able to build what I call the mental fitness to get through that, because it's funny to say it, but it's not about physical fitness.
Yeah, I've heard other people say that.
To run an ultra marathon. You just have to have the mindset that if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, you will get to the finish line. And that's life, isn't it? We experience deadlines, we experience illnesses, we experience setbacks, hurdles, challenges. And if we're able to tell ourselves and also not tell ourselves, if we're able to recognize that the emotions that those challenges give us, that we feel as a result of those challenges, and not get bogged down by them, that's the ability to cope with the bad stuff. But that also improves our ability to enjoy the good stuff.
Absolutely. So I'm interested. You mentioned the phrase a couple of times. What do you mean then by the phrase mental fitness? What does it mean for you?
So mental fitness, and it's something I talk about in my book in quite a lot of detail, is the ability to cope with life's ups and downs. Cope with the downs and enjoy the ups, by building self-awareness, to tune in to the emotions that we feel as a result of those different ups and downs. So it's not letting the downs get the better of us, and it's fully appreciating the ups, and to the extent that you can celebrate those, and rather than thinking, oh, that's great, but I've got to now move on to the next thing. So there's so much impetus and emphasis on sort of the societal pushes and pulls, and I need to buy a house and drive a Range Rover and get a good job and all the rest of it, that we're not doing things for ourselves, and that is part of mental fitness, in terms of recognizing our successes and celebrating them.
I think for me it was about being able to recognize that actually I wanted to come back to balance. When I first stopped drinking, it was like an emotional roller coaster. I had no idea what the hell was going on, and knew that I needed a slightly different identity as well. But it took me a while to recognize that I had to just stop searching for highs all the while, and actually it was okay to feel balance. There was a real beauty in that, that sense of contentment that that kicks in at some point. I think for me completely took me by surprise. Actually, people talk about the joy of sobriety, and I didn't really know what they meant. And when it did kick in, it wasn't the kind of the pink cloud thing of, oh my God, this is incredible. It was much more of a slow burn, of a kind of a yeah, kind of a contentment and starting to come back to who you really are. That's one of the magical pieces, I think.
I think that's a very pertinent point. As one of the people. So the book is my experiences, but it's also a series of interviews with a number of interesting people that I've met along the way,
Yeah,
experts in various different fields. One of whom is a psychologist who talks about the fact that actually negative is the wrong word. I apologize. There's no such thing as a positive and negative emotion. It's how we reflect on those emotions that's important. But troubling emotions, perhaps like anger, grief, things like that, are actually really important. And
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with
absolutely.
experiencing them. We have to. We will all face challenges, whether it's as a the list I mentioned earlier, death of a loved one, or redundancy, or Rachel Reeves, telling us that we're a business and we've got to pay higher national insurance contributions for our employees. There's always setbacks,
Yeah,
and we need to be able to deal with those without being too weighed down by the emotions that result from them. So
yeah,
that the ability to handle grief and deal with it and move through the grief process, through the denial stage, through the anger stage, through to the acceptance stage, is actually very healthy and very important process as a human being that has a brain that has developed more than our chimpanzee cousins. The ability to reason with yourself and logic. These are all sort of evolutionary traits that we possess that no other creature on the planet does. So
mm,
it's a fascinating. The brain is fascinating in terms of how it deals with these things, but it's something that we should be consciously doing rather than unconsciously.
yeah, absolutely. I did a great interview with Carla McLaren, who speaks a lot about emotional language, if you like, and she talks about all emotions being welcome, even though we don't particularly want to feel sad or guilty or upset. Actually, all emotions are welcome. Because, as you say, they're all there for a reason, and it really is about how we deal with them, as you say, and particularly anxiety, which is something that often comes into play in the early stages of ditching the booze. You have so much sense of anxiety, but anxiety is kind of almost always around overwhelm, and if you can kind of accept that, start to work with it,
Anxiety
it'll
and fear
pass.
generally derive from a lack of understanding. There's two types of fear, and again, something that I keep mentioning in the book. It's something I go into in detail in the book. Is the two types of fear. There's physiological and there's the psychological fear. And the physiological fear is based on 2.5 million years of evolution and the survival of the species. If you see something that your brain deems dangerous, the flight or flight response kicks in, and you get the hell out of there.
Yeah,
The psychological fear is where you don't understand something. And actually, a lot of the time, anxiety, for example, same thing, can be better understood if you have the full details as to what it is that you're facing. And
yeah,
and I
absolutely.
went through this process very much so in the early days of my sobriety, because I feared not being accepted by my friends, because effectively I was a different person.
Yeah,
I had changed from being the Jack the Lad, big 10-pint drinker after a game of rugby and this life and soul centre of the party, lad type individual, to being a little bit quieter, a little bit more reserved, not necessarily wanting to go out, but actually the fact that my friends told me that I was still the same person. That was all in my head. That I'm a different person. I was still the same person. I just no longer needed alcohol to lubricate the social situation. But it was a lack of understanding as to how my friends would perceive the situation, and it was an assumption from my perspective, a naive perhaps assumption, that they would see me in a different light.
yeah,
So again,
yeah,
it's about having the anxiety comes down to, and fear often comes down to not having the full information.
yeah, absolutely. And so, what would you what would you recommend then for people who, they're not going to be running ultra marathons, but they would like to begin to build that mental fitness? What are some of the things that you would recommend that might work for everyone?
Read my book, first of all. That's
Yeah.
obviously the key one. There it is, Ready, Set, Life. But I think, again, the point that I make about ultra running is that it's a metaphor, and it doesn't have to be running 100 miles. There is something for everyone that can be your mindfulness. And again, that word has different connotations, but mindfulness can be 3 minutes whilst the kettle's boiling, where you don't look at your Instagram feed and instead you put your phone in your pocket and you just think to yourself, well, how am I feeling today? And there is something for everyone. I give you the example of one of my interviewees in the book. Is a girl called Esme, who's a fairly renowned personal trainer, and she does a lot of TV presenting for the likes of the London Marathon. And she did in lockdown to help people that were struggling with isolation and the anxiety around the lockdowns and COVID. She did a series of 30 different videos filming herself performing 30 different exercises. The point being that if you don't like running, that's fine. Maybe you like dancing, maybe you like yoga, maybe you like tiddlywinks. It doesn't matter what it is. There is something for everyone that we can use as a way of channeling our emotions in a way that is positive and beneficial for us.
Yeah.
Exercise for me is an absolute absolute must. Again, for my mental fitness rather than my physical fitness. But it could equally be a hobby. It could be knitting. It could be fencing.
I think it's really true, because I think that, I've had some clients who have found that, when they stop drinking, they had so much more time on their hands, of course. We forget how much time it all bloody takes, planning it, drinking it, recovering from it. And so they found they had a lot of time on their hands, to the extent that, in some cases, they then became aware that they didn't have very much going on in their life. So actually stopping drinking shone a light on the fact that their world had become really quite small. And then if you're not careful, that then leads into another whole set of emotions around guilt or not being good enough or whatever, the whole shoulding on yourself. Oh, I should be doing this, should be doing that.
I love a shoulding. Yeah,
exactly. And actually, by just becoming curious as to, okay, so what can I bring in? What can I bring in that helps, makes me feel inspired, makes me feel okay, even if just for a short time. Makes such a difference.
Yeah, I think curiosity you just mentioned there is key, and experimentation. And again, it comes back to this sort of ingrained survival mode that we have in our brains, that we just want to be comfortable. Take the example, and again, I use it just as a personal example, whereas it could be anything. Take the example of running training for a 5K race, for example. On the first day of your training program, your brain will tell you, no, don't go running. It'll be hard. Do it tomorrow instead. And funnily enough, the next day, it won't tell you, well, now's the day.
Yeah.
The next day, it'll tell you, no, do it tomorrow. I quote Chief. I don't know if you remember Chief Vital Statistics from Asterix. He says, "Tomorrow never comes."
Yeah, exactly.
He's afraid that the sky will fall on his head tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes. And it's that sort of innate survival instinct, and the same goes for any new endeavour. If you're wanting to find something to fill that void, that drinking void, then unfortunately you've got to put yourself into a position of slight discomfort in order to experience the different options and opportunities that exist. And it might be that you suck at something, and that's fine. At least you've tried it.
Yeah.
But that brings me on to another point, that since semi-retiring from long distance running, I've recently taken up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, have you?
And this is
I've heard Russell Brand talking about that. It's
blows my mind
amazing.
every time I do it. It's because the reason for that is because you can never master it. There's always
Mm,
something to
yeah.
learn, a technique to refine, or something to improve on. When I was running, again, I'm 6'5", 70, 100 kilos. I could never run a marathon in 2 hours.
Mm,
I would never be running across the finish line with Elliot Kipchoge. I was always a 4 hour plodder, and I was never going to be any better than that. No matter how much fitness, and just my body's just not built for running.
mm,
So there's this sort of, you hit a plateau. Whereas if you're willing to sort of put yourself out there and suck at something initially, but do it just to the extent that then if you do it again the next day, you suck ever so slightly less. And this is the reason I keep coming back to jujitsu, or I keep going jujitsu training. That ability to just slightly improve one day at a time is the same premise for sobriety, the one day at a time mantra. And it's just keep coming back, just keep coming back, just keep coming back, just keep doing it. Again, it's the one foot in front of the other, just keep moving forward, just keep moving forward. And you will hit that goal or that deadline or that whatever it is you want in life. It's that ability to just sort of keep putting yourself out there and if necessary, keep experiencing a little bit of discomfort, because ultimately it's the short-term pain for long-term gain scenario.
yeah, absolutely.
That is where we achieve. That is where we find purpose, find fulfillment, find success, find happiness. There's that famous phrase that success without happiness is failure, isn't there? So it's that one
Yeah.
day at a time mantra.
Yeah, I call it kind of stepping into your sober shoes. It takes a little while to get the fit, to
Yeah.
feel comfortable. But yeah, well, it sounds fantastic. I mean, the book sounds great. Now, I love the fact that you've interviewed a few other people as well. So you've got, some different perspectives on resilience, I suppose, and mental fitness. I mean, one thing I do think is really interesting is that, most people, once they've quit the booze, they find that they're obviously more resourceful, but they're also brave. It helps you become brave. And, many of my clients have said to me, oh my God, I can't believe that I've just gone and signed up for a creative writing course or, decided to,
It's
climb a
clarity of
mountain or
mind,
whatever.
isn't it?
Never would have been that brave before.
No, no. But it's a willingness to be engaged with
Yeah.
people around you, with your loved ones, with your friends. I mean, if I was still drinking, the reason I wrote the book was that I have a 10-month-old son. And when my wife and I found out that she was pregnant, I started thinking about the world, and let's face it, it's a bit of a mess. There's climate crises going on, and dictators and wars, and bringing up a young child in the midst of all that is going to come with its challenges, both for us but also for him as he navigates his way through that. So I wanted to put down a few thoughts about my emotions as learning that I was becoming a father, but it would have been very egotistical to have just written it about myself. But also I wanted to bring other people's experience and expertise in to talk about subjects like fear we've talked about, like identity, like resilience, mental fitness. And that's why there's 10, 12 interviews with some genuinely, I say this, I'm biased, but they're genuinely fascinating people, from special forces soldiers to world record holders and former England rugby players, but also there's some sort of, stardust, but also some just genuine experts on a range of fields, psychology, anthropology, a clinical therapist, a life coach, a PT, just talking about these incredible topics, from stoicism through to identity, change, fear, trying to make some sense of everything is the long and the short of it. So, but I would never have been able to do that if I was. You come back to the sort of creative writing. I would have never been able to put it all together if I'd been drinking. So,
No, absolutely.
Clarity of thought is.
Totally. Well, thank you so much, James. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I wish you all the best with the book.
That's very kind.
James Gwinnett, and the book is Ready, Set, Life. So I'll make sure the link for that goes into the show notes. And I wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Very kind of you. Appreciate your time. Good to talk.
Thank you, James. So we're going to pop the info in the show notes. A reminder then that on Monday night, we've got a live podcast recording at Club Soda. I can't promise whether there are tickets left or not. There could be, but have a look. It will be fantastic to see you. I'm going to be chatting to Sam Delaney, podcast host of The Reset, and a fantastic book, Sort Your Head Out. So we're going to be talking about mental well-being, emotional well-being, particularly as we gear up for Christmas. So I'm going to be asking a few of the people there for their top tips actually around resilience and staying sober and feeling great as we come up to the completely silly season in the UK. And then Tuesday night, there is our free webinar, From Sobriety to Purpose, exploring a career as a sober coach. So if that's something that interests you, or if you want to do the Club Soda thing, you'll find both of those completely different events, of course, but you'll find them both at thesoberclub.com/events. And then just a reminder that my book gigs are kind of done, but we are booking for next year, for January the 10th in Andover, and 29th of January in Edinburgh. And there's also some really interesting things coming up. So do go to thesoberclub.com/events, because there's also a comedy night that one of our coaches, Tony Wardstill, is hosting. And that's right at the very end of January. That's going to be such a fun night. It's open to everyone. And you'll find information about that. That's an event that's being hosted in association with the Sober Club. So you'll find that as well on our events page. So just a reminder, if you're struggling, if you're thinking, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this coming up to Christmas, if you've got that wine witch in your ear, just get in touch. Please reach out. Don't hole up. It's when you hole up that it goes bad. It's when you think it's just between you and that voice in your head. Don't allow that to be the case. Reach out, whatever's going on for you. Perhaps you're already sober and now you've got something else that's really niggling at you. Well, just get in touch. Just ask somebody, reach out for help, get some support. Obviously, I'd love it if you want to join us in the Sober Club, but if that's not for you, then find a group that is, or just reach out to me anyway. I'm very good at getting back to people whenever I possibly can. I will return your message. Sometimes it's just good to know that you're being held accountable, and just by telling someone else what's going on or what you're committing to, it just gives you that extra layer of accountability, and it's super powerful. It really is. So don't let this frantic, busy season get to you. It'll be okay, I promise. And I'm so looking forward to seeing some of you on Monday night at Club Soda, and others on the webinar on Tuesday. And, if I'm not going to see you in person, well, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. And I shall see you same time next week. Thank you for listening to the Alcohol Free Life podcast, brought to you by the Sober Club. Please rate and review. And if you want support, accountability and inspiration, and you want to live your best life without the booze, check out thesoberclub.com.